I'm Dr. James Whitemore, and I need you to pause whatever you're doing right now because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you think about protecting yourself from cancer after your 50th birthday. There are five ordinary foods, nothing exotic, nothing expensive, that major cancer research centers have been quietly investigating for years. And the findings are so compelling that I believe every person watching this deserves to know about them today. Most doctors won't bring these up during your annual physical, not because there's some conspiracy, but simply because nutritional breakthroughs take years to filter into mainstream medical practice, and your doctor has maybe 12 minutes with you before the next patient walks in. Let me share something that stopped me in my tracks. Researchers at Yale School of Medicine followed more than 52,000 men and women aged 55 and older for 16 years. The results were stunning. Those who regularly consume certain protective plant compounds showed a 39% decrease in major cancer diagnoses compared to those who rarely ate these foods. 39%. That's not margin of error. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern we cannot afford to ignore. Now, I'm going to tell you something important about the food at number 3 on our countdown today. It's something you probably have in your pantry right now. But there's a timing mistake nearly everyone makes that strips away almost all of its cancer fighting power. When we get there, I'll show you the exact fix that takes less than 1 minute. But first, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me whether cancer has affected your family and if you're actively doing anything nutritionally to lower your risk. I personally read every comment on this channel. Your experiences guide the videos I create. This isn't just content to me. This is a conversation, and I want you to be part of it. We're counting down 5 foods ranked from remarkably effective to absolutely life-changing. Everything on this list is sitting in grocery stores right now, available for less than the cost of a single prescription copay. Let's dive in. At number 5, we have something that rarely gets attention in mainstream health media, and that's precisely why I want to start here. I'm talking about lentils. These humble legumes have quietly become a focus of intense scientific interest. Researchers at MD Anderson Cancer Center discovered that compounds found in lentils, particularly a type of fiber called resistant oligosaccharides and a class of antioxidants known as flavonoids, reduced the growth rate of colorectal cancer cells in controlled studies by up to 68%. Colorectal cancer remains one of the deadliest threats to adults over 50, and here's why lentils work so effectively. Resistant oligosaccharides behave differently than typical dietary fiber. Instead of being broken down in your stomach or small intestine, they travel intact to your large intestine, where beneficial bacteria ferment them into compounds called short-chain fatty acids. One specific fatty acid, propionate, has been shown to trigger apoptosis, which is the medical term for programmed cell death in precancerous cells before they have a chance to develop into full-blown tumors. Your body already has this self-destruct mechanism built in. Lentils help activate it. Here's what makes this especially critical as we age. After 50, something called mucosal barrier function begins to deteriorate. The protective lining of your intestines becomes thinner and more porous, allowing inflammatory compounds to seep into your bloodstream. This creates exactly the kind of chronic inflammatory state that cancer cells exploit to grow and multiply. Lentils directly combat this. The fiber strengthens intestinal integrity, and those flavonoids reduce inflammation at the cellular level. For maximum benefit, cook dried lentils from scratch rather than relying on canned versions. Research indicates fresh cooked lentils deliver approximately 40% more of these protective compounds. If canned is your only option, rinse them well under cold water. And here's a powerful pairing tip. Drizzle them with avocado oil after cooking. The monounsaturated fats enhance your body's ability to absorb those fat-soluble antioxidants by nearly triple. Aim for half a cup 4 times weekly. That's easy to incorporate into grain bowls, soups, or even mashed as a spread. I want to tell you about Linda, a 63-year-old accountant from Austin, Texas, who attended one of my workshops 3 years ago. She had two siblings diagnosed with colon cancer before age 65, and she was understandably terrified. She restructured her eating habits around these principles, making lentils a staple 4 days a week. When she had her follow up colonoscopy 2 years later, her gastroenterologist remarked that her colon tissue appeared healthier than patients a decade younger. Linda told me she wept tears of relief. Small, consistent choices creating measurable change. Moving to number 4, and this is where things get really interesting because we're discussing a food that's been linked to reduced risk across 4 different cancer types simultaneously. I'm talking about almonds. A groundbreaking collaborative study between Stanford University and the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center found that women who consumed just 1.5 ounces of almonds daily, roughly a small palmful, experienced a 52% reduction in markers associated with breast cancer progression in high risk groups. 52% from something you can keep in your desk drawer. Almonds work through a triple action mechanism that's particularly powerful in aging bodies. First, they're loaded with a specific type of vitamin E called gamma tocopherol, which functions as a potent anti-inflammatory agent. Chronic systemic inflammation, imagine a constant smoldering fire throughout your tissues, is now recognized by oncologists as one of the primary conditions that allows cancer cells to thrive and metastasize. Almonds help extinguish that inflammatory fire. Second, almonds contain significant amounts of quercetin, a flavonoid that research from Cornell Medical School has demonstrated can interfere with the process tumors use to create their own blood supply, known as angiogenesis. Tumors essentially hijack your circulatory system to feed themselves. Quercetin disrupts that hijacking attempt. Third, almonds provide plant-based compounds called amygdalin derivatives, which have shown selective toxicity toward cancer cells while leaving healthy cells unharmed in laboratory environments. After age 60, your body's endogenous antioxidant production drops by 35 to 45%, and cellular energy production becomes less efficient, making cells more susceptible to the DNA damage that initiates malignancy. Almonds compensate for that age-related decline. Always eat them raw, never roasted. Heat exposure degrades the vitamin E and dramatically reduces quercetin content. Here's your synergy strategy. Eat your almonds with a few squares of 75% or darker cacao chocolate. Research from Barcelona Institute of Science and Technology showed that the polyphenols in dark cacao and the quercetin in almonds create a synergistic anti-cancer effect, significantly stronger than either food alone. 1.5 ounces of raw almonds daily, preferably mid-afternoon when your body's natural antioxidant activity reaches its lowest point. Now we're at number 3, and this is the one I teased earlier. It's a food you almost certainly have touched this week, but I guarantee you're preparing it wrong, and that mistake is costing you nearly all of its protective benefit. I'm talking about garlic, and specifically the critical timing error that destroys its most powerful compound. Garlic contains a sulfur-based molecule called allicin, which has been the subject of over 2,000 published studies examining its anti-cancer properties. The National Institutes of Health has described allicin as demonstrating extraordinary potential. Research from Penn State College of Medicine found that allicin activates cellular pathways that suppress tumor formation in stomach, esophageal, and pancreatic cancers by up to 64%. Here's the critical problem most people don't know about. Allicin doesn't naturally exist in intact garlic. What exists is a precursor called alleine and a separate enzyme called alleinase. When you crush or chop garlic, these two components mix and create allicin. But if you immediately throw that chopped garlic into a hot pan, the heat instantly destroys the alleinase enzyme before allicin can form. You've added garlic flavor to your food, but received almost none of the medicinal benefit. The solution is remarkably simple and takes less than 60 seconds. After you crush or mince your garlic, let it rest on your cutting board for exactly 10 minutes before any heat touches it. During those 10 minutes, the mechanical damage from chopping activates the enzyme and allicin forms at room temperature. Once formed, allicin is heat stable. Then you can cook with it normally and retain the compound. A study from Pennsylvania State University demonstrated that this simple 10-minute wait increased allicin bioavailability by 280%. That's nearly triple the cancer-fighting power from a 10-minute pause. Here's why garlic deserves this position for older adults specifically. One of aging's most dangerous hallmarks is the accumulation of senescent cells, sometimes called zombie cells. These are cells that have stopped dividing but refuse to die, instead secreting inflammatory molecules that damage surrounding healthy tissue and create the perfect environment for cancer growth. Research from the Institute for Aging Research has shown that allicin can selectively promote the clearance of these senescent cells from your system, acting like a targeted cleaning crew. I had a patient named Thomas, 68 years old, a retired engineer from Denver, Colorado. Thomas had been monitoring elevated CEA levels, a tumor marker, for nearly 2 years. His oncologist was watching closely. Thomas made deliberate dietary shifts, including properly prepared garlic 5 times weekly, along with other foods from this list. Over 18 months, his CEA levels normalized. His oncologist was cautiously optimistic and admitted surprise. Thomas told me it gave him a sense of control he'd been desperately missing. That psychological empowerment matters more than most people realize. 4 to 5 cloves weekly, crushed and rested for 10 minutes before cooking. The synergy tip: add a pinch of black pepper when you cook your garlic. Black pepper contains piperine, which research confirms enhances allicin absorption significantly, amplifying the effect. Coming in at number 2, and pay very close attention because this food has been making waves in oncology literature for over a decade. I want you to picture something vibrant, green, and cruciferous that most people either love or hate. I'm talking about Brussels sprouts and the compound inside them called indole 3-carbinol. Brussels sprouts belong to the Brassica family and contain exceptionally high concentrations of indole 3-carbinol, a compound your body metabolizes into a molecule called DIM, or diindolyl methane. A study published in Cancer Research Journal involving over 95,000 participants found that regular consumption of brassica vegetables was associated with a 31% reduction in bladder cancer and a 24% reduction in hormone-related breast and prostate cancers. DIM works by modulating estrogen metabolism. It shifts how your body processes estrogen toward less aggressive forms, which is critical because estrogen dominance, especially in postmenopausal women and older men, creates conditions that promote hormone-sensitive cancers. Beyond hormonal effects, indole 3-carbinol activates detoxification enzymes in your liver that neutralize carcinogens before they can inflict DNA damage. For aging individuals, Brussels sprouts offer an additional advantage. They're extraordinarily rich in glucosinolates, sulfur compounds that support something called autophagy, your body's cellular recycling system. After 65, autophagy efficiency declines sharply, meaning damaged cellular components accumulate instead of being cleared away. This accumulation creates cancer-friendly conditions. Brussels sprouts help restore that cleanup process. Lightly steam them for no more than 5 to 7 minutes to preserve maximum glucosinolate content. Overcooking destroys these compounds entirely. The synergy approach: toss them with olive oil and a small amount of turmeric after cooking. Research from the University of Michigan showed that the combination of indole 3-carbinol and curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, produced anti-proliferative effects on cancer cells that exceeded either compound alone by a significant margin. 3 to 4 servings weekly, each serving being about 6 to 8 medium sprouts. And now, the food at the absolute top of this list. Number 1 is not trendy. It won't win awards for culinary prestige. But the scientific evidence supporting it is so overwhelming, replicated across so many independent research institutions and so many cancer types, that I consider it the single most underutilized cancer-fighting food available to adults over 50. I'm talking about tomatoes, but specifically cooked tomatoes and the carotenoid compound they contain called lycopene. Lycopene is a deep red pigment and one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. A comprehensive meta analysis published in the International Journal of Cancer, aggregating findings from 26 independent studies covering more than 280,000 men, concluded that high lycopene consumption correlated with a 31% reduction in overall prostate cancer risk. In men with the highest intake, aggressive prostate cancer risk dropped by 47%. The American Institute for Cancer Research has identified lycopene as a priority compound in cancer prevention strategy, and the protective benefits extend to ovarian, gastric, pancreatic, and lung cancers as well. Here's the beautiful paradox that makes tomatoes unique. Cooking them dramatically increases lycopene bioavailability. Unlike many nutrients that degrade with heat, lycopene becomes more accessible. In raw tomatoes, lycopene is trapped within rigid cell walls in a molecular form your digestive system struggles to extract. Heat breaks down those walls and converts lycopene into a configuration your intestines can absorb with remarkable efficiency. Researchers at Ohio State University found that cooking tomatoes for just 30 minutes boosted lycopene absorption by 62% compared to eating them raw. This means tomato sauce, tomato paste, canned tomatoes, and even ketchup are medically more potent than fresh tomatoes from a lycopene perspective. For aging bodies specifically, lycopene performs two critical functions beyond standard antioxidant activity. First, it inhibits a growth signaling molecule called insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1, which tends to increase as we age and actively stimulates cancer cell proliferation. Lycopene essentially blocks that growth signal. Second, research from the University of Cambridge demonstrated that lycopene provides specific protection to mitochondrial DNA, the genetic blueprint inside your cell's energy-producing structures. And this protection is significantly more pronounced in older tissue than in younger tissue. After 65, mitochondria function less efficiently and sustain more oxidative damage. Lycopene appears to directly address that age-specific vulnerability. Target 4 to 5 servings of cooked tomato products weekly. A serving is half a cup of marinara sauce or 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. Here's the non-negotiable synergy principle. Always consume cooked tomatoes with a source of healthy fat. Lycopene is fat-soluble, meaning your body cannot absorb it without fat present. Eating tomato sauce without olive oil is like having a key but no door to unlock. The fat is the door. A landmark study confirmed that adding fat to tomato-based meals increased lycopene absorption by 370%. This is why traditional Mediterranean cuisine, olive oil, garlic, basil, and tomatoes cooked together correlates so strongly with lower cancer incidence in those populations. Cultural wisdom and molecular biology arrived at the same conclusion independently. These 5 foods, lentils, almonds, properly timed garlic, Brussels sprouts, and cooked tomatoes with fat, represent something profound. They represent the convergence of ancestral dietary patterns and cutting-edge oncology research. They cost virtually nothing. They require no doctor's prescription. They produce no harmful side effects. And every single one has been rigorously studied by credentialed researchers at accredited institutions whose citations I've linked for you in the description below. I want to speak directly to you for a moment. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, you might sometimes feel like the opportunity for real health transformation has passed, that your genetics are locked in, that the damage is irreversible. I need you to hear this with absolute clarity. The science says you're wrong. Multiple peer-reviewed studies confirm that nutritional interventions in adults over 65 produce measurable improvements in cancer biomarkers, immune response, and cellular integrity within just weeks to months of implementation. It is never, ever too late to give your body better fuel and better information through the food you choose. The goal isn't just adding years, it's adding vitality, independence, clarity, and strength to those years. It's waking up with energy to spend time with grandchildren. It's maintaining the physical capability to travel, to garden, to do the things that bring you joy. That's what all of this research ultimately serves. You deserved access to this information decades ago, and I'm grateful every day that technology allows us to bridge that gap right now. If this video provided value to you today, please subscribe to this channel immediately. It's completely free and it ensures you'll never miss future evidence-based content designed specifically for your age group. Hit that notification bell and most importantly, leave me a comment answering this question. Which of these 5 foods will you start incorporating this week, and did anything I shared change how you'll prepare it? I read every single comment. You're not just a viewer, you're the reason I do this work. I'm Dr. James Whitemore, and I'll see you in the next video.